On the back of the EndSARS protests, there were accounts that went towards victimization of the EndSARS protesters. Some saw their lives as threatened and ended up living as fugitives in their own country. Others went as far as to flee the country. There were journalists who strove to get at the truth behind the allegations and counter-allegations, especially regarding the events of 2010-2020. These journalists discovered more than they bargained for, but felt an obligation to lay it out for all to see. In this report, the status of Nigerian journalists as an endangered species is explored. Take a watch.
It began as the EndSARS protest, seemingly out of nowhere, rapidly capturing the imagination of the nation and beyond by the organization and united effort it demonstrated, especially among Nigeria's youths, whom some had written off as lazy. Criticism turned to respect as onlookers watched as the protests gathered momentum whilst retaining focus. This in spite of eruptions of hooliganism. Some started to ask where it was all heading. However, it all hit a brick wall with the events of 2010-2020. The macabre undertones of what has come to be known as the Lekki tollgate massacre, though disputed by some, left a trail that has subsequently been unearthed by those who looked to find answers. Ozzy Okoli, a Rise reporter, was able to tell the story of several Lekki tollgate victims who sought refuge in safe houses, traumatized and still in fear for their lives.
Before we went, we actually heard that there was going to be coffee that day. We were like a coffee where people plenty, superstar come, the video was there, say which kind of coffee won't take place like that. We went. So on getting there, I was actually at the snooker board that night. I don't know how to play snooker, I was just standing with him while he was playing. I was like, okay, let me go and check my phone that was on charge. The lights went off. We were like, what was wrong? Next thing I heard was there was just shooting everywhere. The guy that was actually leading me to the charging point was shot at the side. So when I saw he was shot, I tried to turn back to check if it's just a normal something like that. So I received my own on my thigh. Even right now, the bullet is still inside of me.
I'm speaking on behalf of my brother who died from this protest. Ayodunbe Gabriel Ayola.
Fisayo Shoyombo, an award-winning journalist, in his series titled Portraits of Blood, documented the testimonials of victims who, though intimidated by threats to their lives, were persuaded to tell their story. Speaking on Newsday on Arise News, Fisayo told of why he continues to risk life and limb to go after the truth.
If we say as young people we want a better country, we don't like the way the country is run. We don't want a state where people can't speak up, people can't ask for something as basic as freedom from police brutality. Then we can't all run away. Some people have to stay back and do the job. You know, when we talk about change in this country, we young people like to lay all the blame at the doorstep of the politicians, the leaders. But we have to realize that everyone has a role to play. The journalist has something to do. The lawyer has something to do. Everyone has to get involved in the process of trying to make this country better. What I can do as a journalist is to seek the truth.
What really is your underlying motive, or what motivates you to do what you do?
My background, I was born to a father who always told me I had to be honest in everything. Even if I was wrong, I had to. If I did something wrong, my dad wanted to give me 6 strokes of the cane. If I admitted it, he would give me 2. I was brought up to always seek the truth. To always value integrity. And then I read animal science. I spent 6 years across 2 universities studying agriculture-related courses. And I decided, you know, after 1 year in campus journalism, I decided I was going to become a journalist because I saw journalism as a tool for speaking out for the voiceless, for trying to push for a better society. We did it on campus and we saw results. I'm like, okay, it would be nice to spend the rest of my life trying to work in a space that makes the society better. So Journalism for me is more than a job. It's more than trying to make a living. It's more than trying to earn a salary. It's a calling.
Are journalists an endangered species, as far as the Nigerian terrain is concerned? If it is accepted that journalists are the frontline soldiers in the push to speak truth to power, should their safety and welfare be of concern to all of us? These are issues that should surely concern a nation in vital dialogue with itself on the way forward. Ekene Ezeji for Arise News.
Well, and joining us now is David Hundeyin, who is actually a journalist who's on Exile, to put things in perspective. Well, David, thank you so much for joining us tonight on the program. And of course, having just watched that report, and one reporter said, not all of us can run away. Could you tell us what led to your decision to go on Exile?
So it was basically two things. First of all, the kind of journalism that I do isn't really the sort that, like, I'm not really the kind of journalist that knows how to tone it down, as I've been advised to do on several occasions. I believe that if something is an objective truth, it needs to be put out there, especially in the kind of country that Nigeria is, which is suffering from a huge deficit of public trust and of basic truth. So I thought that eventually it would get to a point where I would have to make a choice between keeping silent and losing my freedom and or losing my life. And knowing the kind of person that I am, I wouldn't be able to keep silent. I know that about myself. So I thought it would be expedient to leave the country, because I believe that my voice is more useful if I'm alive than if I'm dead or if I've lost my freedom. I think I'm more useful to Nigeria if I'm actually available to do this than if I'm, in an underground cell or in an unmarked grave somewhere. And it was going in that direction. And then secondly, with specific reference to the story that actually served as the trigger in me leaving the country, which was the events of the 20th of October and the information that I got, which basically implicated at least some level of the Nigerian government in terms of who was responsible for throttling telecommunications on the night, which would also go some way toward indicating, obviously, who was responsible for the massacre, which they kept on denying took place. And I thought this particular story, knowing the kind of people that are in government now, knowing that these are people who were in government during the era of Babangida and Abacha, that same military coterie, that cabal of people, they are the people in power now. And I know that how they dealt with problems then was by shooting bullets at it. They know no other way. To a man whose only tool is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And I knew that eventually that's what they would do. So when a few days ago, the Fisayo's story that you referenced in the lead up to this came out, and I actually read that they have been going around, silencing people, i.e., shooting people who, were survivors or who knew survivors of the Lekki massacre, to try to cover up their crimes. It didn't really come as that much of a surprise to me, because I expected this. In fact, I expected them to do a lot more, because this is the Abacha solution to solving problems. We've seen this in Nigeria before. It's a pity that we have gone down that road again. And going forward, I'm not completely sure where that leaves us in terms of 2023 or the other permutations that people have regarding the future of the country. What I do know is that presently Nigeria has gone down a path that is very difficult to reverse. And I'll just quickly close with this: that in any society where journalism becomes a crime, in any society where telling basic objective truth becomes an endangered activity, that society is well on its way toward losing its status as a civil society and becoming an open dictatorship. And currently that's where Nigeria is heading, if not where Nigeria is altogether.
Okay, so David, what are the efforts? First, let me lay the foundation for this question in view of the fact that there are organizations like Wole Soyinka Investigative Journalism Award and organization being put together to encourage journalists to be a lot more investigative and to go out and find the truth. What are the efforts that can be made as added support to the work of journalists in performing their role and empowering them to be able to get the truth and to publish it in all situations?
Right. So probably the most important thing in the context of Nigeria would be that the business model of journalism is endangered. And I say it's endangered because, okay, I'll mention two things that your viewers probably don't know. The two biggest ad spenders in Nigeria, who do your viewers imagine they are? You'd probably, if you were to ask your readers, your viewers, they'd probably think it's, some bank or, some telecoms company. And actually, that's very wide of the mark. The biggest ad spender in Nigeria is the Nigerian government, the state and federal levels of the Nigerian government. The second biggest ad spender is a private conglomerate whose name I won't mention, but who I'm sure we all know, whose adverts you don't normally see in the media all over the place. So you would be surprised to hear that they are the second biggest ad spender in Nigeria, but they are. And the reason they spend that much on ads is that when you have 25, 50 million naira of your ad budget as a media manager coming in every year from this conglomerate that probably isn't even going to draw it down, and next year they'll give you another hit of that money. You need that money to survive, to pay salaries and whatnot. But that money obviously is like a golden handcuff. It comes with conditions, obviously, that there are certain stories that you can't cover, there's certain things you can't touch, there's certain things you can't touch. And if you're trying to build a journalism ecosystem where all stories that need to be told can be told, that sort of financial enslavement, if I can put it that way, that Nigerian journalism currently has to the Nigerian government and to certain parts of the Nigerian private sector, which are part of the overarching Nigerian establishment, needs to be broken, which means the business model of journalism needs to be independent. So ultimately what that would mean, which a lot of people don't want to hear, is that there needs to be some form of subscription-based journalism. The people themselves, whose interests are served by objective journalism, need to find a way to fund journalism directly, because the current business model of journalism, which is heavily reliant on advert revenue, contains, especially in Nigeria, this is around the world, but especially in Nigeria, contains the implicit implication that whoever the ad spender, whichever story the ad spender does not want you to cover, you are not going to cover it. They are not even going to come to you and tell you don't cover the story. You yourself will self-censor as a media practitioner. You will do so because you know what side your bread is buttered. So I think that's the most important thing. The business of journalism has to be divorced from the interests that are trying to control it or that are already controlling it. And secondly, and probably just as important, is some level of advocacy from the citizens. Now, I'm not talking about advocacy from the civil society organizations and from journalists themselves, but ground level advocacy from people themselves. Who
absolutely. Well, David, there's a lot of issues because, of course, even in recent times, Nigeria has actually fared really badly looking at press freedom index that we have seen in the last few years. But you are a journalist on Exile. As we wrap up this conversation, what hopes do you have of returning to Nigeria soon? Quickly, David.
I don't know about soon. I know with regard to the current administration, it's very unlikely that I'm going to come back to Nigeria at any point before May 29, 2023. And I'm also going to hope that there's actually a transition of power, because again, there is no guarantee at the moment that is actually going to happen. But if that were to happen, I would be very happy at some point if I was sure that my safety wasn't going to be in question. Then yeah, Nigeria is my home. Nigeria is always going to be my home. I was born and raised there. That isn't going to change. But as I said earlier, I think I'm more useful to the country if I'm alive than if I'm dead.
Okay, David Hundeyin, Nigerian journalist in exile and doing some work out there. Please do stay safe, and we wish you the very best of luck, because we're all hoping Nigeria will get better when everybody can express themselves.